There are just 10 days left in the Obama presidency, and tonight the 44th president says farewell to a nation that helped him make history as the first African-American president.
Tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
That was his victory speech more than 8 years ago, delivered in his hometown of Chicago, and that's where he'll return tonight to reflect on his presidency in a nationally televised speech. And although the Windy City can rightfully claim the former community activist as its own, Boston played a big role in launching his political star. It was on the campus of Harvard Law School where he became the first black president of the Law Review, a prestigious post that set him apart from a group of accomplished peers.
It is that fundamental belief, I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper, that makes this country work.
And who can forget his electric speech before the DNC in the old Fleet Center back in 2004? I was there reporting just feet from the stage. It was that night when a relatively unknown state senator from Illinois started on the path to become the future of the Democratic Party, and he never forgot his debt to Boston.
And then, in an instant, the day's beauty was shattered. A celebration became a tragedy. And so we come together to pray,
helping the city heal after the marathon bombings in 2013. It's been a remarkable run for President Obama, filled with highs and lows, lofty expectations, and more than a few disappointments. Tonight we'll spend our entire program on his legacy with insights from people who know him and worked with him. Joining me are Michael Astro, Republican former Social Security Administrator who was appointed by George W. Bush, served under President Obama for 4 years. Good to see you, Mike. Colette Phillips, who was on the New England for Obama Steering Committee and the Mass Women for Obama Executive Board. Hi there, Colette. And Cameron Curry, a Democrat who was the acting Secretary of Commerce in the Obama administration. Good to see you, Cam. Let's start with the economy. Who could forget the fall of 2008 when the country was in free fall? Banks were failing and the unemployment rate was spiking in the wrong direction. In January of 2009, it stood at 7.8%, hitting 10% by October that year. Last month, it sat at 4.7%, but critics charge much of that dip can be attributed to people leaving the workforce altogether, a group that hit a 38-year high during his tenure. Part of his legacy will include an infrastructure bill to create jobs, though liberal critics said it was not big enough, reforming the financial services industry, and bailing out the automobile manufacturers. Cam, does he deserve credit for healing an ailing economy over these past 8 years?
Yeah, I believe he does, Jim. I mean, the record since 2010 has been 75 months of continuous economic growth. That's the longest period since the recovery from the Great Depression.
If that's true, then why did the people elect somebody, and many people think primarily on his economic message, Donald Trump?
Well, you know, there are people who have been left out of that. You know, there are pockets where the jobs have not come back. That's a function of technology, trade, and the displacement of jobs. But you know, the record has been of growth, and you know, that's across most of the country.
Has the record been of growth? Are you satisfied with 8 years of Barack Obama in the economy? Why not?
No, I think the recovery has been very slow. You know, at some point, economies recover on their own after recessions. You haven't seen a lot of job growth. You haven't seen real increase in wealth. And to the extent that you've seen improvement, it's been concentrated very much where the Obama administration is concentrated. It's on the coasts. We've done better on both coasts. But if you look at, it's not just a few pockets, with all due respect to Cam. It's huge swaths of this country that are still suffering.
Which is the region of the country, the Rust Belt in particular, where Donald Trump won the presidency.
But even, you know, upstate New York and lots of places that people don't think about.
Do you want to break the tie, Colette?
Well, I would say, don't you think that that has to do with the fact that our economy has changed from manufacturing and industrial to more innovation, and most of these people need to be retrained. I don't think those jobs that Donald Trump has promised are never going to come back.
You know, Obamacare, obviously the signature domestic achievement, you know, now you see it, now soon we may not. Has regardless of what the Republican Congress and Donald Trump do to it, has he set the bar by establishing this essentially mandate that there be universal coverage that ultimately is going to stay with this country, or does that legacy have potential to disappear practically overnight, Colette?
I think if you ask people who are poor and unable to pay for health care, they would say that Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act has helped tremendously. I just saw a man talking about the fact that if they repeal and not replace Obamacare, that he will be left without health care. And this is a man who voted for Donald Trump.
You know, there's a lot of good in there. My sense looking back is despite being one of the great orators of all time, I would argue this president did one of the worst sell jobs on his signature legislation. Is that not what the major downside was? One of the reasons why it never gained huge popularity?
I think it's a broader problem with this administration and a surprise, because to say something positive.
Well, thank you for that.
No. I was the campaign in 2008 was a thing of beauty, and the oratory and the symbolism. It was beautiful. When the administration began, the oratory dropped, and I think there was sort of almost like a law professor type mentality. Well, if it's clear to me, it should be clear to everybody. And
you don't think it was what Mario Cuomo said? You campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. You don't think that was the deal?
There's something to that, but you still, if you're going to move the country in a new direction, you have to really educate them as to why. And I think that, again, to be bipartisan, that Ronald Reagan did a good job of that. Bill Clinton did a good job of that. I have to say, I don't think that the success of the campaign translated to the administration.
Wasn't part of the problem also? This was not one Republican vote. And looking back, could we not have seen a problem somewhere down the line when you don't have one Republican buying into something that people like you would say is a spectacular advance?
Well, I think that was a systematic effort, Jim. You know,
by the Republicans or by
the Republicans. And if you remember, you know, Mitch McConnell set out inaugural day to say we need to deny this president anything. And I remember that when I was tapped to join the Department of Commerce, there was no Commerce Secretary. Bill Richardson had stepped away.
Because no confirmation?
And no, because I don't know why he stepped away. His own reasons. But in a short span of time, I learned I was going to be working for Senator Judd Gregg, who was going to be Obama's Secretary of Commerce.
Yeah.
Right. From New Hampshire. After a period of about 2 weeks, he decided he was too much of a Republican to be part of the Obama team.
Greg decided that, not Barack Obama. Correct?
Greg decided that, absolutely. I think, you know, in hindsight, it looks a little bit quaint and a little bit naive that President Obama thought that there was going to be this opportunity.
There are no Republican, there are no Democratic ideas. They're just
and I think
ideas.
in some sense, Greg's decision was a little bit of a tip-off.
But can you blame everything on Republicans? I mean, the one place where I think there was clearly a failure, 90% of America supported some gun reform. Nothing happened. In fact, the two things that did happen on the gun front during Barack Obama expanded gun rights in national parks and on trains and that sort of thing. Does he not deserve part of the blame for that failure?
I agree with some of what Mike said about the president's sort of sustained rhetoric on this. I mean,
remember when he said, "You have a drink with Mitch McConnell." Remember that line? Yes.
I do remember that line, though I certainly sympathize with that line, Jim. But
I think I'm going to have
no
to
drama,
differ.
Obama.
What were we going to say here, Colette?
I think I have to differ. I think these were people who were intransigent. They decided they were not going to do anything to work collaboratively or cooperatively with this president. And you cannot work with a group of people who decide that they are not going to work with you. They want to make
that's
sure.
absolutely right.
Very quickly,
With all
yes.
due respect to my friends on the left, I don't agree with that at all, because I was there, and there were 3 or 4 Republicans showing serious ankle saying, if you make some minor concessions in the malpractice area, we'll vote for a bill of kind of this
Which
kind
might
of
have
message.
had far greater significance than
Yes.
just a few votes.
And of course, then I've got a contrarian opinion. I think part of the problem there is the Obama administration really wasn't controlling this process. I personally...
Nancy Pelosi was.
No, actually, Harry Reid was, because they had a working majority in the House. They needed 60 in the Senate, and they had 60 Democrats. I think Harry Reid actually made most of the major decisions